GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
What up? It's the Chris Caden. That's right. I am Chris Caden, and you are listening to the All Bets Are Off podcast. Bam!
What's up, rock soldiers, and welcome back to the All Bets Are Off podcast. I'm your host, the rock star Robbie Vegas. But before we get started today, I do want you all to know that today's episode is brought to you by Restaurant.com. With Restaurant.com, you can save at thousands of restaurants across the country with just a few clicks. Their dining deals range from $5 to $100, never expire, and cost you a fraction of the face value. Dinner's never been easier with Restaurant.com, used for dine-in, takeout, or delivery. Restaurant.com is offering our listeners 50% off their next purchase by going to www.restaurant.com/podcast. That's www.restaurant.com/podcast for 50% off your next purchase. Restaurant.com, the best deal every meal. So, all that being said, today we have a very good friend of mine, a man I've known for a long time, worked with in the ring, and love him outside the ring, and that's Dewey Murray. You probably know Dewey, and a lot of you probably know him without even realizing it. So, I don't want to waste any time because I want Dewey to tell you his story without me giving too much of it away. So, we're going to get Dewey on the phone right now. What's up, brother? How are you?
Good, how are you?
Living the dream. All through quarantine.
It's a hard time, man.
Right. All right, Dewey, man, thank you so much for agreeing to do the show. We've only been talking about it for like a million years.
Yeah, I was supposed to try to be on a few weeks after Rob Sweet was on.
Yes, yeah. So we're doing it now. We're wrangling everything together through the pandemic, and I want to know everything about your pro wrestling career. So we're going to start at the beginning. Where did you get started?
I was started at the Kayfabe Dojo, which is now the Flower City Wrestling Academy.
Who was the trainer at the time?
Ooh, this is going to be a fun story. I went through trainers because Rochester Pro Wrestling closed down and joined Kayfabe Dojo. So I was supposed to be trained by Ian Decay. I show up, he goes, "My ring's not here anymore. I'm now partners with Hellcat." I'm like, okay, cool. Where do I go? So I go meet him, and he's like, "Hey, yeah, I'm taking over for, Ian, blah, 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 but I'm keeping his trainer, Rick Matrix."
Oh, wow, okay.
So I trained with Rick for about a month and a half, and I was in a class of about 12 people, and we kept asking him why we didn't learn and why we weren't learning, certain things. All we were doing was calisthenics. I mean, for 2 days, we did a class where we learned how to get in and out of the ring.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, like, we were, paying good money because, wrestling schools aren't cheap. So we kind of asked Rick, and Rick took us all in the ring and kind of beat the piss out of us. Mm-hmm. And the next day, out of about a dozen people, me and 3 other people showed up.
Oh, wow.
So at that point, the owner was scratching his head. He goes, "How the hell did I just go from 12 students to not even 4 or 5 of you guys?" So then the owner at the time, which was Hellcat, ended up stepping in, and he actually trained us, and then it transitioned into Jimmy Olsen training a bunch of the guys at that point. But during that time, I would go, and whether I was, spending, $10 to do a local seminar, or I was driving down to the Albany area to work with them, I worked a lot with Chip Stetson in the early years.
And about what year was all of this happening?
That was between 03 to 05, because I started in 03.
Okay. Do you remember when you had your debut match?
Week in the training, I got to manage Chills and Thrills in a handicap match against H.C. Loke.
Get out of here. You had your first show a week into training.
I was just supposed to be a manager. Somebody no-showed, and they were like, "Hey, kid, could you just walk out with these guys and say a line or something?" And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And, needless to say, Loke slapped the shit out of me, and I couldn't hear for a week. That was my welcome to the business.
Yeah.
And that was just when Loke was fresh in the Ring of Honor. So I wrestled him as, like, I think he was just at that time becoming the number one contender for the Ring of Honor tag titles. So, I mean, like, I wrestled him at one of his peaks after, he just left ECW.
Oh, wow, that's huge. And you said that was about 2003?
Yep.
Wow, so you've been doing this for 17 years.
Yep, I started right before I turned 16, and then when I was, legal enough to wrestle, the first match I was ever in that was me of being 18 was a 6-man scramble that I think the only person still wrestling out of it is me and Maximo Suave.
Oh, wow.
Actually, no, I take that back. I think the Latin Soldier was in it too, because the match went to go start, Abyss came out and killed all of us.
Oh, wow. Okay, very cool.
We didn't even get to start.
I mean, you've had, like, a pretty cool career right from the jump then with the people that you've gotten to work with even early on.
Yeah. Yep. Same thing, I was 2.5, maybe 3 years in, I started doing legend impersonations.
I remember that because when I first saw you as a fan, not as a worker, you were doing Dew Dust.
Yes.
So I do remember it. So how did that come about? Like, tell everybody what you mean. So you were just pretending to be like versions of legendary wrestlers. So where'd that idea come from?
Thank you, Mr. Meany. I was working for a promoter at the time, and it was a big anniversary show up here in Rochester. It was for, I believe they were NWA Upstate at the time. They've gone through some name changes. And they were supposed to have the Meanie in, and the Meanie was supposed to ride with the Backseat Boys, which is Johnny Cashmere and, R.I.P. Trent Acid.
Yes.
Two of the greatest guys ever to come out of the Philly area. And they were supposed to bring the Meanie, and they called, the promoter, like, I think 2-3 days before, was like, hey, man, the Meanie's not going to make it, but Chris Hamrick's up in the area, and, we're going to, bring him with us and whatever. So the promoter at the time, which was Hellcat, called me up and he goes, how would you feel about being the Meanie? I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, you're his size. He's not going to be here, and we were hoping to do something with him. So I'm like, oh, okay, it's around Halloween time. I can get away with it. Not a problem. I get there before, I dye my hair blue like an idiot because, they have temporary hair dye and whatnot. So the Backseat Boys are running late. They got stuck in traffic, and Chris Hamrick was once again with them. This is why Chris Hamrick's a major part of the story. So they end up getting there, and I was doing a spot with them. It was Kevin Dunn, me, Marcos, and Jason Van Atlas at the time in a 6-man tag, and it was, I forgot who they worked, and Chris Hamrick was the special guest. And I was supposed to be the ha-ha funny guy, come out, mess with Chris Hamrick type deal. So they finally get there. I'm changed. He walks in, and all he sees is a chubby kid in a white tube top and some short shorts and blue hair from behind. Grabs my shoulder and goes, you mother, you said you weren't coming. Why the hell didn't you? And I turn around and he goes, you're not him? I was like, yeah, change of plans. Hi, Dewey, nice to meet you. And it kind of got a pop. And then we were like, let's see if it's, something you can run with. And it was something that I ran with for about a good, until 2011-ish.
Oh, okay. That lasted a long time. So something that was supposed to just be like a one-time deal ended up getting over, and you got to use that for a while.
One of, like I said, you met me as Dew Dust. That was one of my popular characters. I had a promoter. Don't worry, he hasn't promoted in like a billion years. So I can straight up call him a mark. He was a mark in Maine. Do you remember when they first came out with Cyber Sunday back in the day?
I do.
I remember the Intercontinental title. I think Goldust had it at the time, and there was like, you could vote for who you wanted. And this promoter wanted to see goddamn Honky Tonk Man versus Goldust. I got a phone call a week later, and this dude was like, hey, I heard about you. I want to book the Honky Tonk Man, but only if you could wrestle Goldust. I know you're not the real Goldust, but that's a match I want to see. And legitly, this guy brought me out to Maine, paid travel and all, just so he can watch a match that he voted for during Cyber Sunday and didn't get to see.
Come on. Oh, my God. Well, let's stay on your travel here for a second then, because you've wrestled all over the place. How many states have you actually wrestled in?
Wow. Over about 15?
I thought so, yeah, because you've been doing this a long time, and you're a road dog. Like, you're out there and you're grinding. So
I love it. And I mean, that's not the wrestling part. I mean, that I truly do have a passion for, but, like, traveling, man, it's fun. I mean, like, you pick your crew, you pick your best friends. I'm not gonna, lie or bullshit. I don't pack a car full of, the boys and stuff. I'm always with Rob Sweet. He's always with his fiance, and I'm with mine. And we go travel. We make dates. We make, weekends, and we do tours. But we travel, and don't know if you know this, we're not small guys, and we travel, and we travel with food.
Yeah, right. Well,
we can tell you where there's a Waffle House. We can tell you what specialty food and where to go for what, and what town's got the best barbecue, and Sheetz definitely is better than Wawa's. I mean, you name it. I can probably recite the Waffle House menu from front to back like the ABCs.
Well, so you're having a good time out there just with the travel, aside from wrestling, and you mentioned Rob Sweet, and I know that we told a story about you when he was on the podcast when I believe it was at Nickel City Wrestling where he split you open with his elbow pretty bad in a hardcore match that you guys were having. But you guys have had some wars, and do you take those on the road too, or are you usually teaming up? Well, what's the deal?
Dude, we've won tag titles, we've worked names, and then we've beaten the crap out of each other. And at the end of the day, you know what makes a difference?
What's that?
As long as the fans enjoyed themselves. All that counts. And I'm going to tell a part of the story that he did not tell from that night. Because we were just talking about this, because Biggs, that owns Apex Wrestling, I'm really close with him and Mama Biggs and whatever, and we were talking about, funny moments. And that show where Rob split me open, that was like about 3 weeks before his birthday.
Yes.
So right before the match started, he was like kind of nervous all day, and like, you've been in the ring with Rob. Rob doesn't get nervous wrestling. Like, wrestling's not like anything that makes him nervous. It makes him calm. It makes him happy. It's his, place.
Yes, absolutely.
And we get ready to go out, and he goes, oh, man, I really got to tell you something, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, shit, what did I do? I was like, I didn't even get out there, man. I didn't blow anything already. He's like, dude, I'm going to do it. I was like, what? Did I miss something? Like you're pulling thumbtacks out your ass or something? I don't know. I thought I had to do the match. He goes, no, I'm really going to do it. I'm going to ask Nicole. I'm going to marry her. We are going to get fucking married. Just like that. I was like, oh man, that's cool. That's what you've been nervous about? I go, yeah. I go, well, I've been waiting for it, and all that. And we had the congratulations and all that. And, needless to say, the whole time that she was driving, I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And so I kept saying to Morgan when they were parking the car, I go, Rob's going to pop the question. Rob's going to pop the question. I'm not concussed. Make sure I remember this. I'm not concussed. They're going to get engaged. And fast forward, they did get engaged. And then about 6 months later, I got busted open by Bruce Maxwell in the same spot. And I finally got to say, because Nicole drove me to the hospital again, I finally got to say, I go, oh, my buddy's fiance drove me. Yeah. So I mean, I've got nothing but love for those guys, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of crazy stories.
Well, I'll tell you what, I can't remember when we actually became friends, but I know that I debuted in 2012, and I think I knew you almost immediately. But I do recall one time we went up to Hamilton in Ontario, Canada, and we were the first match on a show for Courage Pro Wrestling. Do you know the story I'm about to tell?
Yes.
So we got thrown into a 6-man tag. It was me, you, and JC Perez, and none of us have ever teamed together, ever. And they just kind of threw it together. And I turned and looked at you, and you were like, you'll be fine. We'll call it out there. And the crowd chanted, please come back, when we finished our match. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And I did that suicide dive and landed in the second row. And that's one of my that's one of my favorite Dewey stories, because I just turned and looked at you like, what the fuck are we supposed to do? And you were like, I got it. Don't worry about it. And I immediately relaxed, because you're one of the few guys that I can seriously trust out there when you say something like that. And everything went perfect from there. So that's my favorite Dewey story for me.
The best part about that was the three guys that we worked, it was all, I think, their third or fourth match?
Yes, they were all pretty brand new.
And they were all, and I don't know if you're going to have him on your show, but I'll put him over so it can lead to him being on the show.
Uh-huh.
But those were Tyson Duke's students.
Yes.
And I've known Tyson for years, and he is one of the most, I know he got in the Cruiserweight Classic, whatever, but he's more than that. He's very underrated. He should have been somewheres by now with a full-time job.
Absolutely agree. We actually just had him on like a month ago. And, yeah, and he told a lot of those stories. But yes, those were all his students. And then our partner, JC, had only had like 3 matches. And this was just a few years ago, probably 2 to 3 years ago. And I'll never forget how it went off without a hitch. And you just slapped me on the back and said, I told you. So that's my Dewey story to share. So now you have also been on WWE television like a lot.
Yeah.
So what was the first time you got called in for that? Do you remember what year that was?
That was 2010, and I thought it was a rib.
Really? So what happened? Did you got a call and you didn't think you were supposed to go?
I got a phone call, and I don't even think she works for WWE anymore. It was a Saturday morning, and she goes, "Hi, this is Amanda Tuscan with WWE. I'm looking for so-and-so." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure as shit you are," and like kind of hung up on her. Because who would think a woman's booking, So I get a call back again, and she goes, "No, really, I'm, head of, talent relations for, booking enhancement talent." And so I go, "Okay, well, then I'm really sorry for that." She goes, "Okay, well, I need to know if you still have long blonde hair." And I'm like, okay, now we're getting back to a rib. We've been 2 minutes in you explaining yourself. I kind of understand. Now you're asking about how long my hair is and if it's blonde.
Right.
This is definitely a rib. I don't know whose girl's ribbing me or whatever at this. She goes, "No, listen again. My name is so-and-so. I work for WWE. I book the enhancement talent." And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll listen to you. She's like, "Well," and then she went into the whole CM Punk thing, and she's like, "Well, we've been shaving, everybody's head, and, we need your long blonde hair if that's possible." I was like, okay, this kind of makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent in, well, you've done extra work for WWE. They've changed over the years, bro.
Yeah.
You fill out some stuff online. Back in my day, you had to send in some 8x10s, one of those paper hard copies and one of those DVD reel gimmicks.
Gotcha.
So, my fault, I only left my phone number and my address. I did not leave an email.
Okay. So that's why she ended up calling you.
So that's why I got the phone call. And I was doing the Shawn Michaels gimmick at the time.
Okay.
So she had a picture of me dressed, a fat Shawn Michaels with long blonde hair. That probably had to be the rib of the office for the week. And I showed up, and they were legitimately like, "All right, you go over here. You're designated to have your head shaved and stuff." And we ran through the spot, and we were only supposed to get our head shaved.
Yeah.
And I kind of was overselling, and so was another guy. We were kind of like overselling being the last head shave, we're supposed to be saved by Jesus at this point.
Yeah, right.
Technically, so we were really into it. And the segment got ready to end, and, they sent down good old Charles Robinson.
Yeah.
with an earpiece. Yeah. With somebody saying things that, you really can't repeat because, they weren't really clean. And we're like, bump them. I don't care. Bump them all.
Oh, wow.
And that was an audible that was called, and we got the crap beat out of us.
So what was it like working with Punk? Was he cool dude that day?
He was a great dude because, when you get to do spots, these guys, talk to you and, kind of whatever. So with him, it was kind of cool because, he was like, "Hey, where are you from?" Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, "Oh, I'm from Rochester," or whatever. And then all of a sudden he was like, "Oh my God, Ballpark Brawl," blah, blah, blah. I was like, "Yeah, I did Ring Crew, and I was on the dark show for it." and stuff like that. So he kind of knew, he goes, okay, somebody that can kind of, work.
Okay, cool. So he was happy to hear that you were paid your dues and you knew what you were doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then at that time I was part of 2CW, but there was somebody, that wasn't, but was from this area, which was Ben Hameen, who's really tight with Serena Deb. So that kind of, loosens the pot when, because wrestling's one of those things where if they can find somebody in common or somebody that they know that can work, it goes a long way.
Right.
Like a quick little side note, I worked North Carolina, and I worked, what was his name? Lou Marconi. Older gentleman, worked for the NWA, but he asked me where I was out of. I told him the upstate New York area. And I turned around and I go, oh, don't worry, I know Chip Stetson. Okay. And the dude legitimately looks me in my face and goes, here's the finish. If you were really trained by Chip, you should know what you're doing in the ring. See you out there. And I had an amazing 12-minute match with the guy.
Oh, that's great.
And we never called nothing but the finish, because he legitimately looked at me and he goes, if you're legitimately worked with Chip and you're a true Chip guy, you're going to know how to work, period, point blank.
That's great. That's awesome.
And it's one of those things, too, where, I did, a dark match with Rob Sweet for Ring of Honor. We teamed together, and he can legitimately tell you the story. Prince Nana asked where we were from, and we said this area, and he was like, oh my God, you guys got to know Loke. And I told him exactly, and, I told my Loke stories, and he was like, all right, I'll see what I can do, and, and legitimately went and talked to Adam Pierce at that time, and got me and Rob a dark match, because we were from H.C. Loke's area. We knew H.C. Loke. We were... technically we knew how to work if Loke would vouch for us and we're from this area.
Yeah, that's huge. And wrestling is like a network like that too, because I know, even for me, you've gone to bat for me many times and said, I know this kid and he can work. Just throw him in there and he'll work with whoever. Yeah. And it's always appreciated when that kind of stuff gets passed down to others, because there are a lot of people out there who will name drop but can't work.
Yeah.
But not to stray too far from your WWE work, though, because that was a big moment when CM Punk was doing that and he shaved your head. But you've been involved in other big moments on WWE TV, too. Do you know how many appearances you've had for them in total?
I've been backstage over 15 times, but I've been on TV about 9.
So one of the ones that I remember that was a big moment was you were one of the people who dragged Ellsworth out of the ring with his feud with Dean Ambrose, right?
Yep.
So that had to be a huge rush. And I think you also got kicked in the face by Charlotte Flair.
I got punched in the face by her.
Punched in the face, yeah, that's right. So is it one of those things now where you're just, when they call you and you go back, they automatically know that you're the guy that can handle it because you've done it so many times? Because those were all pretty big moments.
I mean, this is going to sound stupid, but you've been back there,
yeah.
And there's usually that one extra that's been around the block, and he's usually the guy that goes, okay, well, you check in with so-and-so at this time, make sure your paperwork's filled out, go see the doctor, and just we'll wait here. Because they usually want that one experienced person to kind of help guide the group.
Yes.
And make sure that they're not babysitting.
Yes.
So they'll hire, kind of like an elder.
Okay. So is that kind of your role now?
I guess, but I mean, I've done all kinds of cameos. I mean, I was in a cameo with the Buffalo Boys. They were all backstage, a few times. When Kurt Angle did his retirement, we were all dancing through as part of the Congo line.
Yes.
Do you remember when Mick Foley got ran over?
I do.
As Santa Claus by Alberto Del Rio?
Yes.
If you go back and you watch that clip of Santa Claus's security in front of the doctor's office, you will see me and a young Dalton Castle.
Oh, very cool. That's awesome.
I mean, it's just the little things. And then you brought up, I was part of the, big, huge, what was it, 2 years ago now?
Yeah, I think so.
The women's triple threat, the big, huge pull-apart that Raw before where they got arrested and, beat up all the security guards, which, thankfully that not only got replayed on WrestleMania, if you watch that season of Total Divas, I think it's episode 5, that whole segment actually makes it on a whole episode of Total Divas.
Oh, wow. That's fucking cool, man. You've done some cool stuff. And if I asked you to, like, look back on it and I said pick some of your most memorable opponents, who comes to mind first?
Definitely Rob.
Yeah, I could see that. You guys go to war, man.
And then next, I would actually say H.C. Loke.
And that was early on for you, you said?
No, I got that manager spot, and then he rung my bell, and I kept begging the promoter for years as soon as I felt comfortable enough that I could pull off a decent match, and it kept getting tucked under the rug. And I wrestled Loke 2.5 years ago in front of his son's hometown college crowd at the college he was going to.
Oh, cool.
And ever since then, we've been putting out hell of matches, whether it's singles, tags, six-man. I mean, we're producing, 5-star quality matches that are getting booked as main events, as co-main events. So I definitely put him high on my tier of guys I've worked.
Give us a few more. Give us like 2-3 more.
I'd put Maximo Suave over, even though nobody does. I mean, come on, man. You didn't even want to. You were in a multi-man with him and you didn't want to.
That's true. I fought it. I fought it right to his face. I was like, absolutely not. The Upstate 8 is mine.
I just really enjoy being in there with anybody because everything and every match is different. I mean, there's certain people that I've wrestled numerous times that you can watch each match back to back to back and they're still not the same finish or, the same sequence.
Yeah, right.
Which at that point becomes more challenging because you're like, oh shit, we've done everything under the sun, but then you still figure out how to change it up and switch it up, which is the fun part.
So over the years, since you've been doing this for 17 years now, and including, the WWE stuff, because even up until just before quarantine, you were getting shoved by Buddy Murphy.
Yeah.
With the changing times and with everything you've seen, what are the biggest changes in pro wrestling that you've seen in the last 17 years? And do you think it's better or worse than it used to be?
Certain things better, certain things worse. I mean, there's definitely... when I first started, nobody would complain about winning or losing. Nobody would be like, all right, we were told to do whatever, or if I lose, it's going to progress the story. If I win, it's going to progress the story. And I was legitimately in the middle of a locker room about 1.5 years ago, and this greener guy legitimately was complaining about losing, and one of the veterans was like, bro, who gives a fuck if you win or lose? Go out there, have a good match, make sure the fans leave happy, go collect your pay, and enjoy what you love to do. Who cares if you win or lose? And this kid, without skipping 20 seconds or even a breath, goes, CageMatch.com follows my wins and losses. And I'm like, holy shit. You gotta...
Is he still a worker?
And I legitimately probably swallowed about 15 flies and about 24 mosquitoes because my mouth was open for about a good 20 minutes. I've never had anybody say anything like that because okay, cool, wins or losses, whatever. It's just, at the end of the day, we're there to wrestle. We're there for the fans to go home happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we, put over people like Maximo Suave.
And that's one of the things that kind of baffles me. And then just a lot of guys, it's hard to explain. A lot of guys aren't like they used to be, because I've known guys, and I won't know names. Trading gets too hard for them, but then they'll go find, a Fed that draws 30 people, and next thing you know, they're the champion there, and then they're running around telling everybody they're a wrestler from this area, and then it kind of makes guys like, me, you, I'm from the Rochester area, so guys like, Nick Ando, Cloudy, Cheech, Colin Delaney, Maddock makes these guys and me that work and actually made a name for herself look like shit because you got this guy that's 3 weeks trained, but a promoter 45 minutes up the road that draws 30 people just gave him a title, and he's telling everybody his mother he's a wrestler.
Right. Yeah. And that's a huge problem in this area.
And it's one of those things back in the day when I first started, if you went and say, you quit grapplers, somebody in, Flower City would know, and they'd be like, hey, why are you coming training here? You're not just going to get a spot. You're going to train as hard as you did there. And, like, when you go to these reputable schools, everybody knows, everything, and then it's just, you get those guys that, quit because they can't handle real training.
Right.
And then they go wrestle at these fly-by-night promotions.
Yep.
And it's like, no, that's not how it works. Go finish your training. That's why there's real schools. That's why there's grapplers in the area.
Yeah.
That's why, the Flower City Academy, that's why Springgate has his wrestling school. Sean Carr has a wrestling school. HC, like I can name over 20 wrestling schools people can go to in the area instead of training for a week and then, selling 5 tickets, filling a house, of 30 people down the road 45 minutes and being a wrestler.
Yeah, and you just dropped some heavy-hitting names from the area who are amazing workers, and the area has these great wrestlers. You just have to, know where you're going and who you're going to see. I mean, you said Ando, Colin, Cheech, Cloudy, those guys are all heavy hitters and amazing workers.
And it's, same thing if you go up to the other, end and, we start talking Syracuse. There's so many phenomenal people within our little bubble that it sucks when there's people that kind of undercut our bubble.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So with all that being said, 17 years, are you starting to look at, is it time to wind down? Are you still pushing even harder? Do you got a lot more that you want to do? What's going through your mind at that point?
I always made a joke that if I ever made a living where I had to pay taxes off from wrestling, that I would quit or retire at 20 years, just like a regular job, and I'm calling my own bullshit at this point. Thankfully, luckily, knock on some wood, this wooden desk next to me here. See, now I got my dog going.
Yeah.
But the past, 3 years, I've been able to make a living off from not just wrestling, but being, a national advocate for psoriasis.
Yes.
So, I don't think I'm going to stop anytime soon. I got some, film from home commercials and some good stuff coming up that, before the end of the year is going to be put out and filmed. And I don't kind of want to settle down. You've seen that I was pushing hard to challenge Cody Rhodes for the TNT title.
Yes.
That's not a work. I work with Cyndi Lauper. She is the most sweetest woman in the world. She is a loving soul, and I am so glad to be working with her and be an advocate with her. Whether she's advocating for psoriasis or gay rights, she is just an awesome person.
Mm-hmm.
The first shoot that I did with her, she kind of was like, hey, you're the wrestler, right? And I was like, yeah, well, next thing you know, she's chain wrestling me, and about 3 minutes later, I'm on the ground on my back, and she's laughing at me. And now, remind you, she's a little woman about 5'6", 120 pounds, and now, yeah. So go from there. Yeah,
right, right.
And she's got one left in her, and the company that we work for, and all three of us want to see me and her, and she wants to get one last run in her, so we're kind of hoping to get in the ring with her.
Oh, that's excellent. I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to ask you about that too. So again, you've done a lot in your career, and I guess my final question is going to be, what is on your bucket list to do before your career is over in the ring? Do you have a list of opponents you still want to mix it up with, certain types of matches? Just give us whatever you got.
There was one person I've always wanted to wrestle, and every time I'm supposed to wrestle him, somehow the show gets canceled, or he shows up late and goddamn wrestles Ron Falco. I hate Ron Falco for that to this day. I want to wrestle Shane Douglas, and then my other goal is to be managed by Cyndi Lauper, and I know she is a WWE legend.
Yes.
And I would actually love to have that match where she manages me. Actually, I know it's a different company, but I would love to have it in AEW against Brodie Lee.
Oh, yeah. And you've mixed it up with him prior to his WWE run and everything, right?
I actually tagged with him for a little bit. We had 5 or 6 matches together before he left, and in between him going back and forth to Japan. But I will give him credit to the moon and back. He is one of the most influential people that I've actually had in my career. I've actually said it on a few other podcasts when I did the spot with Ellsworth. He pulled me aside and he kind of gave me some weird advice about, making a negative into a positive and doing something different. And I sat and stewed on a ride home, and next thing you know, I'm an advocate with Cyndi Lauper. I'm in People's Magazine. I've been in Men's Fitness. I've, done all kinds of crazy stuff. I've hosted galas on the top floor of Manhattan to hosting kids' charity events for psoriasis at the Philadelphia Zoo. And it was all just because, he believed in me and just kind of gave me advice. And then I was I know we didn't touch on this, but I'll touch on it real quick. I kind of never came out until very late in my career because I was one of those people, I'm going to do everything and I'm going to, win a world title. I'm going to be on TV and nobody's going to say I asked the D to get what the hell I wanted to get in this business.
Yeah, right.
And then on top of that, I was kind of hanging out with, him, and he met my boyfriend at the time, and he was just super nice, not knowing anything. Second time, he meets him, super nice, and we were talking about Sunny Kiss and a few other things, and it was just like, he was the final straw, just being one of my best friends, where it was like, all right, he's accepting, I kind of think he knows, and it was just, so I accredit him to, a lot of help in my career.
That's excellent, man. That's very cool to hear. Well, I think that about wraps it up for us today, so I just want to thank you for doing this, man. Like I said, I know we've been trying for a long time, but I do appreciate all your help in my own career, and I always will, and of course, thank you for always coming out to see me play my music also, and I totally appreciate you, man, so thank you.
Thank you. Peace.
All right, rockers, so that was Dewey Murray, and man, I'm telling you, I knew you guys would know him once he got going. For anybody who didn't recognize the name, you're going to recognize the face. He's everywhere, working with Cyndi Lauper, had some great moments with the WWE as far as being on WWE television, and an upstate pro guy, and, somebody that I've grown closer with over the years, and always wish him the best, and he is not done yet after 17 years, and it sounds like he is in no rush to be done. So thank you for joining us on the All Bets Are Off podcast. I appreciate all of you. Thank you all for listening. We will catch you next week on the All Bets Are Off podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, on Instagram, ABAO Pod. And if you like what you're hearing, rate the show, subscribe to the show. That helps us very much. And check out unchainedmuscle.uk for all your gym needs and some whey protein. And tell them Robbie Vegas sent you with coupon code RVegas20 to save 20%. See you next time.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.